Hello. Today we have discussion about literary foundations of the Netherlands and Flanders. We have two participants in this discussion, each representing a literary foundation, a different literary foundation. One is Agnes Vogt, who works at the Dutch Foundation for Literature. She's the head of translation at the Translation Grants Program for Children's Books. Another participant is Patrick Peters. Is this right? Patrick Peters?
That's right.
Great. Who is the grants manager for poetry nonfiction at another literary foundation, Flanders Literature. Right?
That's correct.
Nice to see you, Agnes. Nice to see you, Patrick. My name is Vera Alexandrova. I work at Samokat Publishing House. I'm the editor. I'm also the acquisitions manager, and I work with the grants. So each time we apply for a translation grant, each time we publish some book that is eligible for a grant, I make this application. So the topic for today's discussion is how state support can stimulate development of literature in children's reading and popularization of the national culture all over the world. And I have a short introduction about why we decided to discuss this with you and what's different about the Netherlands and Flanders state support of literature. And then I'll have a few questions for you, and you can answer them or not if you don't feel like that.
We'll answer them, I think.
Thank you. So the short introduction for the people listening to us and maybe not quite being sure why we are talking about this. Here it comes. Several years ago, in 2016, I wasn't yet working at Samokat, but my colleagues were at the biggest book industry event of the year at the Frankfurt Book Fair. Book industry professionals from all over the world could meet the honorary guest, which was the Flanders and the Netherlands. So those two small countries, small, you know, compared to Russia, apparently, jointly presented an extensive and varied program for readers and authors and illustrators and publishers, and left a very lasting impression. And this is no accident, as we understand, because the literary scene and culture in both Flanders and the Netherlands is of the highest quality, and this fully applies to the children's books that we are talking mainly, because we are Samokat, so it's children's books. And one of the reasons for this is the policy of the state, apparently, to support the book industry with various measures, including dedicated book weeks, financial support of the authors and the illustrators, writers' workshops, and so on. And the ever-increasing international attention and recognition is the result of work, as we see it from here, conducted by the cultural foundations supporting national literature. So as we see it from, you know, our point of view, a lot of this success is because of you and your work. So we have a few questions for you to understand fully how this functions. I don't know, should I ask you in turn, or I will just have a question and you can answer, right?
Yes, that's fine.
Great. So the first question for both of you is not quite a question, but still, please tell us about the history of your foundation. How they appeared and why, and what were the reasons to create those foundations, and what were the initial tasks for them?
Okay. Shall I start?
Yes, you have the longest tradition, so you should start.
I don't know about that. Actually, the tradition is shorter if you think about the Dutch Foundation for Literature as it exists today. That was founded in 2010. Because that was the result of a merge of two foundations which existed before. One foundation which was more responsible for support of authors and translators on the national side, so really on the Dutch side. And the other foundation, where I was working for, was more for the international promotion of Dutch literature. And that was actually founded in 1991 when we were, or they, because I wasn't working there yet, preparing the guest of honor at the Frankfurt Book Fair, but in 1993. So we had been guest of honor then, together with Flanders as well, in 1993. So that was when the foundation for the international support was set up.
Yeah, I was just thinking that maybe I would ask an extra question.
Yes.
So how do you think the tasks have changed over the years? I mean, have the tasks and the purposes of the foundations have changed?
Yeah. Well, maybe I need to specify as well that in the Netherlands, the Foundation for Literature, our Dutch Foundation for Literature, is one of the 6 cultural foundations which are completely funded by the Ministry of Culture. So there's also a foundation for film and for theatre, for visual arts. And I think to answer your question about the evolution or how it's changed in the past years, I think the main task, the core task, is still the same. It's really to support authors to be able to write, translators to have a reasonable income to be able to translate into Dutch. They can ask for a grant when they translate, for example, from Russian into Dutch. And for international promotion of Dutch literature, to encourage foreign publishers, Russian publishers, to publish Dutch literature. And that applies for all genres, really, from children's books, text, wordless picture books, for example, to poetry, and also non-fiction, narrative non-fiction. But what has changed is, I think, the interaction with the whole cultural scene and the changes, for example, in digital publishing, in spoken word publications. We're working much closer with the other cultural foundations. And also on the international side, where we're also taking a role on making sure that the Dutch publishers know what's happening internationally, so to really support them as well as possible to be able to publish in Dutch what is interesting from abroad. So it's, I think that whole multidisciplinary side is the biggest change, I would say.
I see.
Yes, and then Flamand's literature has a little other history because the Dutch Foundation is, like Agnes said, a merging of 2 foundations. We immediately started as one foundation that was responsible for the support of literature at home and abroad. Abroad, it was very small, but after the Frankfurt guest of honor of 93, there was a need in Flanders to support literature, and mostly our task was to better the socio-economical circumstances of authors and people who wanted to write, and that still is one of the main tasks of Flanders literature, that is the support of the writing at home. After the success of the guest of honorship with the Netherlands in Frankfurt in 2016, our international branch actually exploded, and we got a lot more budget to do what we are doing today. That's a bit the history of Flanders literature. We support every genre at home and abroad. And if you are asking for developments in tasks we are undertaking, now we have written a new 5 years program that needs to be negotiated with the Ministry of Culture. And will be the base of our policies for the next 5 years. And one of the main things there is, and the Dutch Foundation is doing that as well, is putting support in development. Development of authors, genres, ways of publishing, all these things that make the quality of literature better. We are going to try to support the upcoming 5 years.
Yes, yeah, I agree. As Patrick says, that's a very good addition. It's really about inclusion and diversity is one of the main themes that both our foundations is focusing on for the coming years.
So how do you do that exactly? I mean, when you
that's what we're trying to find out.
Understand how this works, so we could, you know, take some of your experience and make it work on our grounds. So how do you do that? How do you support development and inclusion and those wonderful concepts?
Yeah. Well, of course, the basis that there is these grants for authors to be able to write. But we have various programs that we've developed over the past few years, really to try and stimulate young, talented authors from various backgrounds, and really, you know, who haven't written yet. So to support them over the period of a year. We, for example, have a workshop. We call that Slow Writing Lab, and also that's really to help them find their voice, their style, but also the genre that they would like to write in. And then we also, that's a program we do ourselves, but what we mainly do is support other organizations who have development programs and try to reach out to diverse authors of different color or different cultural backgrounds. So there are various publishers or institutions that focus on that. And we work very closely with them, not by just giving them money, but really to think with them from what could you develop, how can we support you, how can we help you to become a more professional organization. So that's one of the things. And Patrick, maybe it's nice if you talk about the project that we've set up together with a few other countries as well.
Yes, so we are together with other countries and partners all over the world. There is a European program which is called Every Story Matters. Which is particularly established to inform every partner who is interested in how to work inclusively and have eye for diversity. But it's also a sort of a program that helps people develop their ideas on what could be inclusion, what could be diversity, how do I avoid stereotyping characters in children's books. So it's a whole program which is aimed at education, development, and making books better in terms of inclusion and diversity.
Yeah.
This is great. I was thinking, so you mentioned before the support for the writers who haven't yet written anything, the young authors. So does it work like that? I'm coming to you and saying, I would like to be a writer. Would you support me for a year and give me a workshop. How do I prove even that that I'm actually gonna be an author? How does it work?
Well, that's a very good question, because obviously we can't do that for everyone who would like to write. I think within in most of our countries, many people would like to write or have the idea to write. So it's quite a strict selection, you could say. Within the Every Story Matters program, there's also a training like that. And it's a selection, you know. People can apply, and then we can only choose a limited number of authors that we can support, because it's really quite an intensive program. And the same applies for the program, the Slow Writing Lab that we have. We actually do that with a few partners, for example, with art schools, and they also suggest authors who or potential authors who come from them. So no, I'm afraid we can't open our doors completely to
that's what
everyone.
I thought, because I mean, especially if you're talking about poetry, because I know that all of my friends have been writing poetry when they were 15 or 16. So I was thinking like there would be maybe thousands of people saying, we would like to write poetry, would you support us for a year?
Yeah. Well, this is one of the things, you know, that we're because obviously we're trying to reach out to people that we're not so much in contact yet with, and not automatically. So how do you do that? And it's one of the challenges we have ourselves as well. Up to now, to be able to get a grant as an author, you already always had to have had a minimum of 1 book published.
Yeah.
But well, you can see where do you start?
Yes.
Yes.
So we're in the coming years, we want to change that. So to also be able to give grants for a first publication, but obviously we need to make a selection on the basis of quality. And we have many discussions of, okay, what is quality, of course, from different cultural perspectives. But that's one of our main issues, that we really would like to broaden the scope whilst remaining focused on supporting the quality that needs to be developed, and that is missing in the offer that there is at the moment. Yeah. But it's quite a challenge, how to do that well.
I can imagine.
Yeah. So we work a lot with festivals, literary festivals and podia, because we see that a lot of talent, also multidisciplinary talent, but also from different cultural backgrounds, comes more from, for example, from performing arts.
I'd like to add also that it is indeed undoable to give everyone who wants to write a grant, but there still are people that want to commit themselves almost professionally to writing, and those people are mostly found in writing schools. In creative ateliers, they engage in projects like for us, for instance, the Buren. They have a program for young writers to go for 2 weeks to Paris and discuss writing and write. So people emerging from those scenes, they can show experience in writing without having a first publication, for instance, and it are those people who are legible for a grant in the sense that they haven't had a publication yet.
Yeah.
I see. So you are actually you or this organization program are sending people to Paris for 2 weeks?
So the Buren is an organization in Brussels that focuses on relationships of literature from the Netherlands and Flanders. So it's an organization that deals with both countries, selects young writers via applications, and takes them to a large house in Paris, where they can stay for 2 weeks, and they have workshops on writing. They get tasks, and the results of that make those authors viable for getting a grant in the first place, because they have experience without having published something yet. And publishers are monitoring those people, and most of them get a book publication after a couple of years. Yeah.
Unbelievable. I mean, this sounds like a dream come true. People saying, well, like Hemingway, you know, who stayed young in Paris, like come be Hemingway for a couple of weeks, and then you can apply for a grant. This is wonderful. I'm thinking we should get back closely to children's literature and
Yes.
children's reading, because this is our main concern, you know, for Samokat and for parents in Russia. How do you support children's reading and the children's authors? So my question for both of you would be, do your organizations do something supporting children's reading? And if not, what are the organizations in the Netherlands and Flanders fulfilling this function? And I think that we should maybe start with Patrick now, so the listeners would this idea that they prefer one foundation over the other one.
Yes. How shall I start? Well, we have some projects on focusing on reading, but we have a large institution in Flanders which is called Everybody Reads, whose only task is to work on projects that stimulate reading. And of course, they also they focus very hard on children, because you have to start with children if you want to stimulate reading. They have special programs, and also they are how shall I say, helped by the Queen of Belgium to get attention to reading to stimulate reading for children. And they have all sorts of programs, like a month of attention for children's literature. They go to schools to have authors reading to children in classrooms. They have a program for children on the annual book fair in Antwerp. So it's actually that organization that does a lot for stimulating reading.
We have a foundation like that as well. In the Netherlands, it's the Stichting Lezen, the reading foundation, which really emphasizes on the reading skills and the development of reading from a very young age onwards. For example, there's a book start program for babies, so that parents get very simple books when they go to the doctor with their baby for the first time. They get a book which makes them a member of a library automatically, and so to really try to encourage parents to go to libraries from a young age onwards. Our foundation itself is part of a reading coalition, because there's not only the reading foundations, there's quite a few different foundations in the Netherlands that focus on the development of reading and the pleasure of reading and the promotion of reading and reading children's books. So we try and work closely together to organize bigger campaigns. So for example, now in this time of the shutdown in Corona, we set up a campaign which is called Ik lees thuis, I'm reading at home. So that was a big marketing campaign, you could say, to try to stimulate people to make the most of the time at home and to read. The most important foundation which focuses on children's book promotion is called the CPMB, and they organize a Children's Book Week. That was organized for the first time in 1955. So this Children's Book Week has existed for 65 years now. It's an annual event that lasts for 10 days. When there is enormous attention for children's books in children's bookshops in general, in libraries, but also in schools. Nearly every school in the Netherlands, I would say, primary school, participates and organizes an event. It's one of the brands, you could say. The name, the Children's Book Week, is one of the most known brands in the Netherlands. Proven research. So it's something which is a national institution, you could say. And every year, one author is asked to write a small novella, a 96-page book for children of around 8 to 10, which you get as a gift when you buy a children's book. So you're really stimulated to go to the bookshop to buy a book, because then you get this book for free. And there's also a special picture book which is made every year, which is for a very small price, €5. You can buy that. So it really promotes authors and illustrators. Every year a theme is chosen to be able to focus on certain types of books. But it's mainly, you could say, a big party. It's really to celebrate children's books in all the different places where you can be in touch with children's books. And luckily there's a lot of media attention for it as well. That's what the CPMB tries to organize. So they try and organize a big book ball to open it. I mean, I'm afraid this year will be very different, but I'm sure they'll come up with something original online. But I think we're very lucky to have this this institution, because it's a very good basis from there on to develop other projects.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I'm extremely jealous because, you know, I just tried to imagine this happening in Russia. It would be great. But I suppose that you have a long history, since you said it started in the middle of the last century. Like, we still have to work a lot on this stuff.
Well, do you know what I think also is, because like you said, we're very small as a country compared to Russia and compared to nearly every other country. I think the Netherlands and Flanders, we're both very small. And in a way, that's why I think this is able to work so well, because there is one book distributor. And there are many very small publishing houses, but they have to work together because the market is so small. And so together, the publishers and the booksellers set up this organization to organize marketing campaigns together, because they couldn't do it on their own. They were too small. And I think in many bigger countries, for example, in Russia, you have much bigger publishers who can attain or reach a much wider audience, because there are many more people. And so they maybe had the need to work together so closely is maybe a little bit less. I don't know. I often feel that that because we had to do that, that has helped to set up something like this. And now we're lucky that, you know, it exists for so long, and it's become a national institution indeed. Yeah.
Great. So this reminds me of my next question, because you said that because we are stressing all the time that the countries are so small compared to Russia, but the thing is that The books you produce as your countries are like there are so many wonderful books that it's just unbelievable sometimes that in such a small country or countries you would have so many authors who write with this, you know, high literary quality, as I would put it. So and especially since you are gaining so much international attention. For example, for this book that we published last year, Samakat by Annette Schaap, Lampje. So I think it was nominated for Carnegie, was it?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, and
yeah.
And there are so many other wonderful books and wonderful authors that you have. That's the question is how do you promote internationally your authors and illustrators? How do you work with foreign publishers? How do you manage to bring this wonderful literature to the whole world?
Do you want to start, Patrick?
I want to start. So the best way to bring your literature to the world is visiting the Frankfurt Book Fair. Meeting foreign publishers, talking about your literature, pointing out to them what you think is good quality children's literature, and if you are an organization like us, you can try to convince foreign publishers to publish translations. And we have some tools for that in the sense that there is of course a translation grant that a foreign publisher can apply for, and another grant is that foreign publishers who have published a translation can have the author come over to promote the translated book, and that's called a travel grant. So that's the most easy way to bring out your books to the world. And of course, it's not only Frankfurt, but there is a special children's literature book fair in Bologna. So you visit book fairs to meet foreign publishers. You try to establish a network of foreign publishers you can inform and try to convince, and then it's waiting for their reaction.
Yeah. Yes, well, we work, of course, in the same way. We make publications. I'll show you a little bit the children's books from Holland, brochures with selections of books. So we made this one, for example, The Art of Illustration. And together with Flanders, when we were indeed country of honor, we made this book, which is really a big overview of, you could say, Dutch language children's book publishing from 1945, 1950 onwards. Sometimes we make special brochures about a theme, reading for empathy we made, for example. So we try in different ways. So that was books that really stimulate empathy even more than they do in general, you could say, because any good book does that, I suppose. So yes, that we try and raise interest and point out the quality that there is. And well, like Patrick says, obviously the financial instruments we have are important as well. We really need that. And we see that very strongly now in this period where we cannot go to the book fairs, of course. We're trying to keep in touch with publishers online. But we see that there is actually a rise in the requests for support for translation costs. Which, you know, we're happy with, because obviously it means that there is still interest, and that's our goal, I suppose. But well, like you say, it all starts with having something to offer which is of quality, both from the visual side and from the text side. So yeah, that's what we try and point out. Yeah.
This is my next question about the quality, because the quality of the work like that we get to publish and that we don't get to publish, and our colleagues publish in Russia are, well, it's even unimaginable how many good literary and or art books you publish. Art in the way of like picture books would still look like an art book. So the thing is that we are wondering, how do you manage to walk this fine line between mass production and art production so that it would be simultaneously commercial and sellable and still of very high quality, literary or art quality? And how do you decide who to support, the authors and the illustrators who would work like that? I mean, so that it's not mass market totally, or not some art thing that would be understandable only to a small group of people. So you managed to find some point at which they meet the art and the commercial side of the book. So we are wondering where's this point and how did you find it?
Well, I think the credit obviously goes completely to the publishers who dare to publish authors and illustrators which are not mass market or not obviously mass market, or which are not obviously guaranteed to obtain a larger public or have commercial success. And I think really there are a few publishing houses, both in Flanders and the Netherlands, who really, as we say in Dutch, stretch out their neck, do their best to stimulate talent and to find talent and to support young or new talent to publish children's poetry, or to publish an illustrator which is not obviously an accessible image maybe that they create. And sometimes that's successful and sometimes it's not. Obviously, we do, as a foundation, support publishers to be able to do so, but it's only, again, for a small part of the production that we can support them, because we have a grant where Dutch publishers can ask for production support for a special illustrated children's book. And special, I mean that it really contributes to something new within the offer that's already there. But still, I really would like to say that I think it's the publishers who deserve to be praised for the work that they do. And I think we've been lucky that there have been a few in the, well, let's say 50-year recent history of Dutch publishing, and Dutch, I mean Dutch language, yeah, so Flemish and Dutch, who have particularly been very creative and very active in publishing books, children's books. And I'd like to point out Querido in that sense. I think it was one of our most literary publishing houses, but also Gopme, also Lemniscaat in the past for illustrated children's books. And Patrick, I think the Eenhoorn has played an enormously important role for
Yes.
Flemish illustrators. Yeah.
That's completely true, and also to answer your question, how do you find the thin line between what's mass market and quality? You should also know that one of our tasks, indeed for Flanders literature, has a task of being a bit market correcting. And that means that we are we would easily support something that is of high quality, but probably won't make a mass market success. Mm-hmm. And because the mass market books can finance themselves. So that's why we are a bit of market correcting as well to guarantee quality stays in the center of attention.
Yeah.
So it's not just the publishers, because Agnes said that we should only praise the publishers, but we can see that the foundations also play a big role here, because
the foundations play a big role, but it still is the credit of the publishers, because they have to find the authors and they have to publish them. The only thing we do is help them a little bit in publishing what they want to publish, and so it's also our job. So we don't deserve credit for that.
I agree. No, it's true.
Okay, well,
we work together.
That's great, because from our point of view, we would definitely need something like that in Russia. I mean, when we do not a translated project, but our own project, that would, as we see, wouldn't sell a few thousand copies. If you don't have support from some sponsor or organization that we can do it together with, you know, some commercial organization that can sponsor the publication, then we are not doing it, because we are not able to sell it. So many young artists especially are not able to publish their books because they are not for mass reader, and there is no way to support them. So that's like a dead end in this case. So your work is extremely important from our point of view, you know.
Yes, no, of course. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons that these foundations were set up. That's really to support the vulnerable parts of the literary markets, because in a way, literature is one of the only arts where there is a link to a commercial side. So obviously some of the publications can survive without support, which is practically impossible for performing arts or for film but there is still a big part, of course, of the literature which also really needs support, government support, and that's why we're here. I mean, we're only funded by the Ministry of Culture, and for a small part the Ministry of International Affairs. But we're really a government organization. Yeah.
Great to hear. I wanted to ask you something about our part, how we work with translators and how you support. So we talked about how you raise or help raise the interest or the authors and illustrators in your own country. Now let's talk about how you support translators from other countries. I mean, how do you first choose them? Because you have some list of translators, so you have to assess the quality of the translations, as I understand it, to say that we include this translator in our list. And how do you support maybe training or professional development for those translators? Because I mean, as it was in the Soviet Union, and the translators were all behind the Iron Curtain and they could never leave the country, and it was almost impossible for them to translate some concepts, you know, in the right way, because they have never seen the life behind the Iron Curtain. So it's extremely important for the authors to know what they're writing about, and for the translators to know what they're translating about. So the open communication and the travel and the training is extremely important, I think. So how do you do that, and how do you support that?
Do you want to go first? Yes, like you say, you know, we translators are one of the most crucial elements, of course, in people, and we try and support them as much as possible. Obviously, without a good translation, a book cannot be successful abroad. So we have translators workshops that we organize. We work very closely with universities who have translators programs themselves. We have prizes for translators. We have a translators house with studio apartments where translators can come and stay and work in the Netherlands. Like you say, Vera, to be able to be in the country, to feel the culture, to speak the language, and also, of course, to meet the authors of the books that they're translating and speak to the publishers, the Dutch publishers of the books. So we try and work very closely with translators' houses in other countries as well. So we do a lot to be able to support translators, and we're constantly looking out for translators that we don't know yet. That's to be able to advise them to publishers that are looking for translators to publish the books in translation. And there, like you say, we need to assess the quality of translations. So that's mostly done by experienced translators in that language, because obviously, you know, we only speak a few languages and can only read a few languages. So we really need the other experts to be able to make an assessment of, for example, someone who comes to us and says, I would like to translate. We ask them for a sample, and that's assessed. Sometimes a publisher comes to us and says, well, we'd like to publish this book, and they have a translator that we don't know yet. Then, of course, that's also assessed. Sometimes the quality is nearly good enough, you could say, and then we suggest and pay for a mentor to work together with that translator. So for a more experienced translator to work together with a younger translator. So again, here, you know, we try and organize trainings with partners and work with people individually to see how we can support them as well as possible. Yeah.
Yes, and the only thing I can add to that is that once you are on our list, you're eligible for a translation grant.
Okay, but to get on your list, you have to be assessed by the other people on your list, basically. So,
well, not always the ones on the list. That can be other experts. It can be professors of a university. It can be, you know.
Oh, I haven't thought about it. Yeah, you could. Yeah, it could be a professor.
But it's true. It's often, you know, very experienced translators who are on our list. Yeah.
And I think that we have talked for almost an hour, so I think that I have one final question, because we have talked a lot about how we know your authors and your publishers, and Samokat in particular has published many Flemish and Dutch authors and illustrators, of course. But I was thinking that maybe some publishers, some new and young publishers, because a lot of them have appeared on the Russian market. And I know a couple of publishers who only have one published book yet, so they're just starting. And they may not be quite as acquainted with Dutch and Flemish literature as we are. So my question for you is, how would you describe it to them? Why should they take a closer look at the Dutch and the Flemish literature and the illustrators, and what should they do basically to get acquainted with your wonderful literary market? So what would be the steps for the publishers who would, or some other professionals or translators who would like to understand what's this all about, why we are talking about this for the whole hour, and why it's so important, what's interesting? Who wants to start?
I would like to start because I think I have the shortest answer available. You know, we have developed a special website for foreign publishers, translators, authors. Everybody who wants to know something about literature from Flanders in general, or children's books, illustrated books from Flanders especially, you simply go to www.flandersliterature.be, And normally the website should be able to answer all of your questions. You can search the website by genre. You simply go to children's books or illustrated books. You get an overview of books we are supporting until now, with synopsises, author information, price information. There is a search engine to look for translators you could contact. And publishers also find all the contact details of people dealing with grants and can inform you about books. So it's simply pay a visit to the website and contact us.
I must say, from my part, I'm a huge fan of your new website. When it was developed, seriously, it's one of the most comfortable systems to use, and especially all these automated replies that you have inside. It's just great. So please say hi from me to your developers.
I'll do that.
Thanks, Agnes.
Yes, well, obviously, you know, we have a website as well, but why you should go there is, I'd like to quote you, Vera, that you say that the quality often of the text and the illustrations is very high. I think that's true. That's very something which is often said as a characteristic, you could say, of Dutch language children's literature. And besides that, there's also a big openness in the sense of that often books talk about many different themes, and sometimes quite sensitive themes, but always in an accessible, light-hearted way. So that it's not preaching. It's often very funny. So this lightness, I think, which you often see in the illustrations as well, is in the text and in the themes of the text. So yeah, I'd love to be in touch with publishers who are not so well acquainted yet, and who we're not in touch with as well. And on our website, you can see all the brochures in a digital way, because obviously we won't be able to see many people at book fairs, I think. So yeah, I would also recommend to first go on our website and then to contact me. And our website is www.letterenfonds.nl. So I don't know whether you can see that there.
Yeah.
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 But I'm sure it can be put somewhere as well. If you Google Dutch Foundation for Literature, you come there as well, of course. So yeah, maybe because you had asked that in the questions preparing, I think it's fantastic how many children's books Samokat has published up to now. Because when we see what's in our translations database, where we have an overview of everything that's been published abroad in all the languages of all the publications that we know of, I think there are nearly 400 translations into Russian, of which 131 are children's books. And I think the majority of them have been by Samokat in the last few years. So we're really
it's good
very
because every time I apply, I'm like, oh my God, I hope I'm not too much. I hope it's not too many.
Never.
Oh, great. Well, thank you so much for this discussion. It was really fun. I mean, it makes sense because you work with great and fun literature, and you as the representatives of those literary foundations are wonderful and fun, how to say, people to talk to, mainly. So thank you so much for this discussion, and I hope it will be useful to people who are interested in your work. And mainly I have to say that I'm extremely jealous. Everything that you told us about how it's organized, it's so far from what's happening in Russia that I'm just jealous. So that's it.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much, Vera. It's really great to talk to you. And yeah, let's continue to work together closely, I'd say.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.